Okay, we are on. So welcome from Katrina to Corona, Poor People Solutions versus Government Solutions to COVID-19 and the Virus of Poverty, a special Zoom series sponsored by Poor People's Revolutionary Radio. Poor People's Radio broadcast live Tuesdays, 6 until 9 PST, and Thursday, 4 until 7 on www.poormagazine.org/radio, and on the dial in Oakland at 96.1 FM. All these Zoom broadcasts are available at Poor News Network channel on YouTube, poormagazine.org/TV, and I am the Black Crippled. Who's this?
I'm that poverty scholar, and anti-social workers and case manglers call me crazy, lazy, dumb, and a bum because my knowledge don't come from the institution. What's up, everybody? We love you out there in Zoomlandia. Navigating these digital streets as ghetto scholars is not a little thing, and we also know that it inherently leaves out a lot of folk. So we try to make sure that we're hitting all kinds of different physical and digital streets at all times. For those of you who don't know, we do massive radical redistribution, what we call it. Middle-class folks call it mutual aid. I don't even know what that is, but we on the street all the time, and our Poor People's Survival Guide through COVID-19 and the Virus of Poverty is available on poorpress.net as a downloadable book for free. If you got a little change, kick it to us, and we are printing those copies and being distributed as of July 22nd, and we're trying to raise the money to print the copies because it has a badass resource guide. Anyway, this is PNN, not CNN. And on this series, which me and Leroy launched when COVID hit, we focus on the systemic racist and classist ways that white supremacy and institutional supremacy, like the one we live in the United Snakes of Americlan, responds to an emergency, i.e. military lies, placation, polarized terror, and on the list goes. But at the same time, us poor folks, us indigenous peoples, have our own solutions, which we've already been doing long before the COVID hit, and as usual in this moment, lifting up and looking at the ways in which we can build our own, make our own, and solve our own. So straddling those two realities always, building and fighting and building, right? And the idea at the end of the day is through self-determination, what can we actually resolve?
Okay, and we give shout out to our elder, Malik Rahim, from Common Ground in New Orleans, and our ancestors, Kilu Nasha, and so many more. Tonight, we begin with land acknowledgement and then focus on Scamlords and the so-called virus. On tonight's discussion, we will hear two short excerpts to ground the crisis of Scamlord land hoarding before the virus with one of many elders and family that Poor Magazine jailhouse lawyer team outside of jail advocates for which was put in place to protect tenants. Oh, I'm sorry. And now the pandemic, where we supposedly have an eviction moratorium, which was put in place to protect tenants. But first, a land acknowledgement from Tiny.
So with humility, because I'm not the First Nations people or a prayer bringer, but our sister Katrina couldn't be on tonight with us, although she many times is. But just if we can take a moment of silence, especially in this time, a deep breath in and a deep breath out for all of our First Nations ancestors who suffered this forced form of what I call gentrification, aka colonization, removal, genocide, moving forward into the so-called 21st century, to all the Black and brown, indigenous, and houseless people who still here 527 years later, or still here 247 years later, or still here 2 years later, still suffering, and now worse than ever, getting killed by these occupied armies, by these Scamlords, and by this removal project called the Americlan.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to the YouTube clips. Wesley, you there?
Roy, can you enable screen sharing, please?
Oh, sorry. All right, we'll do that right now.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Remind me how to do it again, person.
I'm not sure. You might go to participants.
No, that just gives me the chat box.
I think it's
Probably security.
You can go to the screen share and it should give you an option if you click on it.
Screen share.
Is it green in the middle of the box at the bottom? Do you see that, Leroy?
How about that? Did that work, Wesley?
Yep, we're good.
All right, thank you. Sorry, people.
thank you, everybody.
Hey, Lisa!
3, 2, 1. Tell me about before you moved here. What?
Oh, that's 8 years ago, I'm as a homeless. I go to the St. Mary Center and the shelter, and for the maybe 2 months, 2 or 3 months. So I go to the Berkeley, the shelter, homeless shelter. I stayed. I probably maybe a couple months. You know, I go to the FEMA home shelter, same as a home shelter, 3 months. You know.
Right,
So that's all over.
right.
And
you don't want to be homeless again.
so I don't want to be homeless again. You know, I'm worried about, you know.
Yeah, you can't be.
Yeah, I worry about that, you know.
It's abuse.
So I need help. Now it's Mr. help me, you know.
I understand.
So I'm very appreciative, you know.
I understand. I
See?
wanna make sure you're okay. Thank you.
Thank
Porque dijeron que no íbamos a pagar, pero ahorita ya nos llegaron a cobrar la renta. Ahorita está el señor cobrándonos la renta y no hay dinero. Ajá, ese es el que nos
the landlord
preocupa.
is already asking for the rent, and she's saying we haven't been working. Nobody has been working. There's no money. ¿Y qué más le está diciendo?
No, porque como no sabemos hablar en inglés, entonces dice que money dice es
And
porque
it's a language barrier too. He's telling them stuff in English. They obviously, she say it's a language barrier. She doesn't understand.
oh my God.
So we will get into tonight's conversation on scamlording and this virus, beginning with the story of Raj Properties.
So just to back up a little bit, and for guests and everybody who's here tonight, we just want to thank you again for being here. You know, it's a very complicated thing, and I want to name it as we go into it, because I know that all the poverty scholars on the call and all the advocate poverty scholars on the call can feel me here. These scam lords have terrorized tenants, right? It's this modern day colonial project called rent and the lie of rent. And so we already know that for every tenant who fights back, for every tenant who refuses and resists, there's literally thousands who just take their bags, like my mama used to say, and walk humbly on Mama Earth and leave out of fear, out of lies, out of perpetration, out of threats, and out of basically not understanding our rights, right? But even within that, there's the R word of retaliation, which is actually more terrorism from these people who think they own Mama Earth. So we're dealing with a CorpRAPE gangster who literally owns hundreds of properties in occupied Huichin, Ohlone land. Some insane amount, like 80 to 90% of the rental properties in occupied Huichin, Berkeley, Oakland, are owned by this conglomerate that comes under a family. And they get away with a lot of stuff. A very humble group of tenants approached for a magazine in the middle of the pandemic because the harassment was still happening, 3-day notices were happening, and intimidation was happening. And so it is not our place to speak on this. We are centering the tenants, and we are centering them with love and understanding and overstanding that they are also afraid. They're afraid even to speak up. So we're going to be asking the one brave, fierce tenant in several hundred tenants, several thousand tenants, who's come forward along with another tenant who couldn't be here tonight, to just lay out the history of some of what's going on. We're going to stick to the facts. And then we're also blessed to be joined by Christine, who is one of several tenants in East Oakland who actually successfully won a rent strike. We love you, families. We're going to hear about that. We're joined by Sanyika Bryant, who's a powerful warrior and organizer with tenants. We're joined by Ty, who's another powerful warrior up in occupied territory known as Washington. Thanks to Lisa bringing them in. We're also joined by Bobbi López, who used to work in the the legislator's office, and is now a powerful warrior, but always was, and some beautiful guests. So we're going to ask each person to speak a little bit, then open it up to questions, and then we'll have another discussion. But let's first hear from beautiful, fierce sister Momii Palapaz. Go ahead, Momii.
You can unmute yourself.
Hola. Can you hear me? Test.
We got you, babe.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
I'm going to say that on July 3rd, it will be 25 years in one apartment building.
Whoa.
Yeah, Oakland.
Wow.
And so I've definitely got rent control, skills here. I just want to say that Raj Properties took over in 2010 here. When I moved in 1995, nobody wanted to live in Oakland. And that's an issue about racism here, because everybody thought that this place was like doomed to drugs. Nobody wanted to move to Oakland, but I loved Oakland. I worked in Oakland in 1990. I came here and I decided, oh, this is the place to be. I was fleeing from the gentrification developments in San Francisco, where I was born and raised. So racism is definitely a part of the whole housing issue here in Oakland, as well as the Bay Area. Because now, 2010, Raj takes over, changes all kinds of things. Nickel diming people, I've had a number of issues with them and went to hearings at rent adjustment program. They didn't show up. So they're a slimy crew of people, and I don't want to say too much. We've had just this COVID thing has brought Raj to give me 5 3-day notices. I have a number of things going on right now. We had our garage taken away from us, our parking slot they do these kinds of things that will irritate people, but to the point where they justify it and they put money on it. So for $50, you could get a remote control because our mailbox has been stolen, mail stolen, and they haven't taken care of it within the past year and a half. So now they're considering it a safety issue and changing everything without even thinking of the people that came before Raj Properties that were already living here. So they try to make money off of everything. I want to speak to the issue of organizing here because it's a big deal when you come to Oakland and you try to survive and you don't want to mess with anybody. You just want to work and, you know, do your thing. Raj puts a lot of these stipulations on people to put fear and intimidation. There's people that are undocumented that live here. There's people that may have too many people in the apartment. A number of issues go on. So it's real difficult on a one-to-one basis. And as a 2-3 month group that just started with this rent strike, we're still here. We're still fighting. And we've actually branched out with the help of Poor Magazine to expose a lot of things that Raj has done. We've done a car drive-by at 520 Van Buren where the office is. There's also an office at 2070 University Berkeley. I just want to say this because there 90 to 95% of rental properties in Berkeley are owned by Raj Properties under various names. Everest is one. But anyway, just to say that 10 years ago, they came in and changed a lot of things and keep people on their toes. And when there's a lull and, oh, everything's fine and dandy, 3 months later, something else comes up. So we're dealing with tenacious, tedious things that go on all the time that Raj is concocting. And they're a monolith of example of rental properties management that are all over the United States to do things to people that are unfathomable. You know, if you're not in the low income, poor people, elderly, families with children that now have to figure out what are they going to do if COVID is over. The other thing is I think the role of the city is not very aggressive because a lot of people don't even know about the eviction moratorium. We did a thing over at 520 with Poor on May Day. A lot of people didn't even know about this moratorium. So I think I really put a lot of, you know, and we pay what's this rental fee, $50 now. It used to be 15 or 25. Now we're paying $50 for the rent adjustments program, which what do they do? You know, come on, let's hear what's going on with the rental adjustment program and the city of Oakland and all these people on the board that apparently are supposed to represent us and have homeowners on them and people that affiliate with rental property management. So I got lost here. I just want to kind of on a roll here with the issues there. But we want to bring tenants in. We don't want to lose them. And one of the things is sometimes when things happen to you, that's when you start to realize. But if it's like another guy or another down the block, you're kind of like, well, that's their problem. We live in a capitalist society and it teaches us to be individualistic. And I'm trying to get people to think socially, maybe come together, you know, let's use each other's ideas. But that's not what's going on right now. I think the tantamount thing is good to go shopping, get out of your house, you know, hang out at whatever mall you want to do. And those are the kind of challenges that we face right now is at the same time, we want to expose this kind of thing, but we've got to be very careful because Raj is ruthless, and they're insidious and mean and malicious. And they're doing all kind of crimes that you got to document every day. And that's something that I'm learning to do right now. And I want to share with you because you guys need to know about this. In the future, I hope that we can get that foundation going where people aren't fearful. So I hope I hear some victories here today.
Ashe. Thank you, Momii. You kick
Yep.
ass.
All right, thank you. So next we got Sanyika to talk about the rights of tenants and what's happening now. So take it away.
Free to land, everybody. Sanyika Bryant, Malcolm X grassroots movement, and Cause of Who's to Just Cause. And I'm just gonna speak a little bit about just some of what we've been dealing with. So yeah, like Comrade Momii just said, like Momii kind of laid it out clear. We do have so-called tenant protection on eviction moratoriums and stuff, but the landlords, of course, ain't letting nobody know about it. The city, of course, ain't letting nobody know about it, right? And the real cold thing about it, I work with folks that live in the residential hotels, like primarily the ones in San Francisco. And you were already, I mean, before the damn pandemic, them things were already a cesspool and a death trap already,
Right.
because of the landlord negligence. I mean, you got situations where even in the nonprofit ones, right? The nonprofit ones that are supposed to be clean and better or whatnot. I've had cases where tenants came to me talking about they couldn't have their guests use the bathrooms or the showers and stuff. Things of that nature. Bathrooms always being unkept. You have the management and the landlords on top of the landlords, management being like another level of exploitation in the hotels too. Like really using whatever power they have to take money off of people's rent. Charging people an arm and a leg for like visitors and stuff like that. All those sorts of things are still going on, right? And so while everybody's supposed to be sheltering in place and everything, you've got all these people that have just been left to fend for themselves in these hotels, where the virus is just running rampant. Like, I know so many people that have caught the virus in these hotels, it's not even funny. This shit is such a human rights violation. It was so avoidable, but because these landlords, these scamlords, like you say, and that's the right word for them, they always hustling somebody, right? Because they're so entrenched in their greed, and they don't look at us as human beings, like just point blank period. They do not look at us as human beings. They don't give a fuck about nobody. They're letting people suffer and die.
For real.
And it's a real serious thing. Like there was food shortages and stuff that were happening because the food program shut down for a while. You had like the janitorial service workers and stuff not showing up for work. They don't want to get sick. They don't want to get sick, and they know the virus is there, right? So it's a real complex and just terrible situation. One of the things, just in terms of solutions, right? And mind you, like the conditions are completely different, and it's hard. Like there's not a lot people can do to like really have any oversight right now. So it really is the tenants coming together, taking care of this business themselves that's doing it, right? Like it ain't me. Like I ain't no damn superhero saving nobody. I ain't doing that shit. But it's the tenants themselves in these buildings coming out, looking out for each other. Altamont Hotel, Comrade Rollo has been working on trying to get access to the laundry machine services, so people can at least wash their clothes and stuff in the hotel. A couple of years back, we were doing Narcan trainings in some of the hotels and stuff, so that and organizing floor monitors and stuff outside of the little case manager structure and stuff in the hotel, so people could look out for each other when they was in case of an overdose or what have you, with no judgment, and people knew what they needed. But that sort of thing, that infrastructure that the tenants built themselves, that's the sort of thing that's keeping people afloat right now. Right. And the more, and it's it's limited, but it's their own. It's coming from the skill of their hands and the brilliance of their mind, and it's those independent efforts that and mind you, we don't know about everything that's going on right now, but I can guarantee there's a lot more of that sort of thing happening now because it's on the pure basis of people needing to survive, right? That sort of thing is what we need to be learning from. That sort of thing is what we need to be uplifting and trying to document as best as we can. Right? And you know, using those, what the people can do for themselves as an indictment against the rest of the damn system. Right?
Yeah.
If the city governments got all these billions and billions of dollars and stuff, is supposed to have all these resources and stuff, why is it that people are left to fend for themselves? And I'm not even mad at the people. Like, you know, when your back is up against the wall, you're gonna do what you gotta do, right? And that's the leadership that we need to be following, right? That's the leadership, right? It's not any of our little organizations. It's not any of that. It's the people themselves, right? Coming together to solve their problems, right? And then everybody else can add resources to what the people are already doing and let the people decide and make the choice on how they want to use what services, what resources might exist, right? Rather than have some damn organization instead tell people what the fuck to do, you know?
Okay. Thank you, Sanyika. That's beautifully said. And that goes back to the self-determination piece, right?
Yes.
I want to pull in, and speaking of which, beautiful segue, Sanyika. Let's pull in Christine Hernandez, who, along with other tenants, actually led a successful rent strike right here in Deep East occupied Eugene, Ohlone Land, Oakland. Christine, tell us how it went down. Tell us to the best of your ability. All good, all love.
All love. Well, I just want to say thank you and say I love that you guys work to, well, I have a couple names I want to put on blast myself, starting with Richard Chadoyan. That was my last, Scamlord, official Scamlord. By the way, the property we were at was 2918 Kingsland Avenue, which remains vacant 5 years later. So, get out there for people.
That part.
So, yeah, after we got squeezed after we lost possession of that house, which if I'd known then what I know now, but we did fight. We fought 2 eviction attempts. The first one we won, but then that was a Friday, and on Monday he, went right back at it and made some claims that were harder to disprove. So after a year, we ended up transitioning out of that property. We really had no place to go. We couldn't afford. We were screwed. We were just so screwed. So the first house that we moved into, we stayed in for 3 years, and that's, that was such an amazing blessing. And we tried to figure out ways to stay, but it was eventually purchased by a developer. And that house, we climbed in the middle of the night and sorted things out and got stuff up and rolling for ourselves. But after that situation, we had a period where we had nothing. So my husband and I and our 4 kids were just scrambling around. We were staying in the back of a U-Haul for about a month and a half. And we put word out to our community and said, hey, these are the skills that we have. We feel like we're called to be here. We feel like we have a purpose for being in Oakland. And we want to, live up to that purpose, but we can't do it if we're just barely surviving every day. So here's a list of skills that we have within our family. And we would like to trade for, below market housing. And somebody in our network gave it to a friend of ours, to somebody we actually didn't know at all. But it was a group of tenants who lived in a house that had 7 units, and 4 of them were vacant. And the landlord at that time was Robert Bennett, and I don't know if that name rings a bell, but he's a villain for sure. And his minion, we call him Bernie the fake attorney, but Bernie Mendia. So, excuse me, sorry. those two people had been trying to push the tenants out. We got a tenant that's lived in the building for 20 years, another one that had lived here for 18, another that lived here with her husband and her kids for 8 years. So both of her kids were like born into the building. This is home, right? But what they did was push people out unit by unit, and they were gaining traction because they had, like I had said, accomplished getting 4 of those units vacated, and they did that by reducing services or gas to the hot water heater. They sabotaged the sewer. There were a lot of issues. And so the situation that we worked out is that the people in the building would go on about their business as we move in. And then we set to, bringing things up to a standard of living that we could all like. That first step also, it was pretty amazing. There were people in conflict with each other in the building simply because they'd been pitted against each other throughout this process by the former owner. And I should mention too that at that time there were people were getting like 3-day notices regularly, all kinds of just nonsensical shit that didn't really hold any weight. It was just a intimidation tactic. But yeah, once systems, once we got some of the systems up and running and humming, people were getting really pumped up. They're like, yeah, we're staying. And it took a good while for the owner to discover us. But another villain in this story is OPD, because when they did discover us, instead of having a conversation, they showed up on a Sunday morning with seven officers, like ascended on the house, like I don't know what. And I'm trying not to make the story too long. You want me to jump to the end?
No, that's good. You're good, hon. A couple more minutes. Okay.
All right. Yeah, so when they first discovered us, we had this whole, negotiation. Another thing I want to put out there is that I support anybody and everybody that wants to claim these properties that are out here and vacant. I got an ongoing list. I do a lot of research, but I also want to take this, opportunity to recognize that I am white, I'm a woman, I'm smaller, the police perceive me a certain way. And so I am always ready and available to like show up and be that person who has to interface when the shit hits the fan. So that was the role that I played in this situation. And after 3 hours of interrogating us and separating us and putting my boys, in a back bedroom, not letting my 16-year-old even put his hands in his pockets, they finally left. They finally left, and it was pretty intense. But at that point, we had claimed all of the vacant apartments because we had some clients. We had to surrender. We had to surrender 2 of them, and we kept 1. Some other things happened, but then the house was eventually foreclosed on, so we ended up with a new owner. And the new owner lives in Oregon, and he was doing these, loans as like he said, a cottage industry bullshit, who cares, whatever. He really didn't want a house in Oakland. He didn't want to be a landlord in Oakland for sure. And so he immediately started doing cosmetic things to try and get the building, sellable. We were pretty frustrated and pissed off because we had some real serious habitability issues that people in the building have been living with for years. And you're out here painting outside of the house for real. So we banded together, and at that point we were really rocking and really strong. And we did have one person interested in buying the house. And he got himself pretty deep into the process. He was pretty close to closing, and the tenants came together because we actually at that point, after trying to identify a way for us to collectively purchase the house together, we had developed a relationship with the Bay Area Community Land Trust, and so they stepped in and made a backup offer on the house. It was an offer that was better, so now we have the owner on our side, interestingly enough, because he wants more money, right? So he's also trying to encourage the other purchaser to go away. We did some things, and we got that guy to withdraw his bid and to walk away. And just this past week, we closed with the Bay Area Community Land Trust, and we own the house. What? So For the
Good
first
job.
time in 5 years, you know, we're taking a breath. I
That's
see you,
what's up.
Gwen.
Congratulations, fam.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Wow.
so now we have 15 people in the building, including kids. Yeah. And we're really rocking and rolling now. And we're not only do we have the money to purchase the house, we have the money through that city program to fix the house. So we're
Nice.
planning. This is our long, now look out. Now I can breathe. I'm not worrying every day about my housing. Look out. You know?
Ah,
So.
Yes. Thank you so much. Good. It's really good to hear good news, you know.
it's rare.
So,
Stay with us, Christine, I hope, because I know that people have questions. Go ahead, Leroy, sorry.
so Ty is up next, organizer and advocate from Olympia, Washington. Take it away, Ty.
Awesome. Hey, thank you guys for having me. I didn't really prepare anything, so I'm just gonna speak straight from the mental. And I'll just go back into like a background of me and then how I wound up what I'm doing and kind of what's going on here in Olympia around tenant rights. So I live in Olympia, but I'm originally from Portland. I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. And I lived in Portland during like when gentrification first started happening. I remember them coming in and tearing down like our neighborhoods. I lived in what was once a mostly Black neighborhood. And I remember developers and big businesses coming in and trading homes for paychecks. I remember them knocking on my parents' home year after year, trying to take our houses and watching all of our neighbors slowly like be removed from the neighborhood, and then white families being pushed in. My family and one other family, we were actually the last family on the block for many years. I think my family moved away from there maybe about 15 years ago. But so we ended up being one of the last families on the block. I've watched St. John's get completely tore apart. Like I won't even go into Portland anymore. It's so gentrified and so white, and I just don't even, it doesn't even feel like home or a place or anything, you know? And so that started like kind of housing instability for me, and just seeing how messed up really the housing system is and how like really like racially driven it is, you know, how like racist it is. And then from there, I started like when I was 16, I was put out on the streets. So I started, I was introduced to the homeless system and living on the streets, living on shelters, living in shelters, living on couches, and started out that way and wound up really traveling around just with my backpack because I was so unstable and didn't have many places to live. And one of the places I wound up actually was in the Bay Area. I lived in the Bay Area for about 8 years, lived in the homeless system, same thing on the streets, and just been dealing with housing instability all of my life. I think I sat down the other day and calculated how many places I've lived just in the last 10 years, and it was like well over like 45 places, you know, so no real amount of stability, except for recently here in Olympia. But then again, no cause evictions found me here again in Olympia. So coming to find out, no matter where you go, no matter where you move, it's this housing injustice is always going to find you.
Yeah.
So I came here to living on people's couches for many years, wound up here in Olympia about 4 years ago, and managed to get an apartment after like a long time looking, because, you know, there's so many layers stacked against you when you're trying to find housing, especially if you've never really had secure housing, you know, credit, background reports, all of those things were always such a barrier for me to get housing. But with someone co-signing, I was able to find an apartment here with the private landlord, which was really awesome. It was $800 a month, 1,000 square feet. We lived here for 4 years, me and my family. It was me and my 3 kids. And you know, it was awesome. Like we made it until one day he sold to a bigger property management company, and we paid rent July of last year, and it was July 1st, and then July 2nd, they came in and gave everyone on the block no cause eviction notices.
What?
Yeah. With the promise of helping us move into other apartments, which did not happen. But so I hadn't done any like tenant organizing or anything until that point. And at that point, I didn't even like really know that that was a possibility, something we can do. It wasn't until my neighbor came and knocked on my door, you know, because we had all been like just sitting there scrambling, stuck, and like had a month left, no idea what to do. And my neighbor took it upon himself to start a petition. We all signed it, and we had no idea what he was doing, but he went out and he found the program WOGHAN, which is what I'm a part of right now as a tenant organizer, and also got us a free lawyer. We were able to use a new RCA that they put into place as a gray area to buy ourselves 30 more days because of the way they evicted us was for beautification. And in order to do that, you have to give tenants 120 days, but they only had given us 60 days.
You say what an RCA is, hon? Just so people.
RCWs, they're just laws, tenant rights laws, or just the laws, policies.
Keep going.
And so we were able to get 60 more days. I had applied for an apartment through their company, which their company is called Prime Locations. I applied through apartment through their company, and they immediately denied my application and wouldn't give me a reason as to why. And it wasn't until I got a lawyer like 2 weeks before we had to be moved out of our place, and I didn't know where I was going to go. So at that point, I just started getting rid of everything. I have 3 kids. I don't know where we're going to go. School just ended, you know, like no money in the bank, nothing. So I just packed up a U-Haul, and something told me to call this lawyer. So I called the lawyer, and I was like, look, they denied me. They won't tell me why. They won't give me my money back. They promised to help me get into an apartment. I have 3 kids. I don't know what to do. So the lawyer called the property location, and within 30 minutes, they called me back and they said, hey, we have this apartment ready to go for you, because they illegally denied me and didn't respond to me in the proper amount of time. So I was able to get an apartment, but they only gave me a 6-month lease. And when the 6-month lease was to be over, then Corona hit. So I'm still in this limbo of what's going to happen when the moratorium lifts. So fast forward, that's kind of how I landed into my position with Washington Community Action Network as a tenant organizer, through the person who helped me, who happened to be a good friend, and then they were leaving and put me in place of them. So since January, I've been doing tenant organizing, and our organization is like a member-based organization where it's all about our members. It's all about uplifting, educating, and empowering our members' stories, our members, how they want to move forward, right? Like we work really hard on organizing buildings. We work really hard, like I work hard on trying to push policies during legislation and with council members, and empowering my members to let them know that they have that voice, that they can go to the council members. Their voice can be really powerful when pushing these policies, because here in Washington, we don't have a lot of tenant rights policies. So that's kind of what I've been working on during the pandemic, especially because our moratorium ends August 1st, and we're all expecting a huge mass eviction crisis that's going to happen. So trying to put into place several policies that will kind of put a net there. It's definitely not going to be like the catch-all, but putting into place like no-cause evictions, because right now anyone in Washington state can get evicted at the discretion of their landlord, unless it's like for retaliatory, because that's one protection we do have. And then another protection is like non-possessory, which is something we got the idea from Berkeley. It's something that Berkeley did, and it's just making rent during COVID that's behind, not any means for an eviction. The tenant would still owe it. The landlord could only go through them through a payment plan or through some other means, but they wouldn't be able to evict them for that. So that's what I'm working on. I've also done a lot of building organizings here, like getting, I have one building here in particular where they're a HUD building, and they're just like living in some really, really not livable conditions. So highlighting and bringing their stories to light and to the public, also helping them write letters to lawyers, and just holding these scumlords accountable. you know.
Yeah.
So holding them accountable, uplifting our members, and also at the same time passing policies.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so
Oh my
much.
God.
Ty, beautiful work. And I also want to just lift up the fact that, you know, one of the things that going back to Sanyika and then you, Ty, the whole notion of, you know, tenants organizing themselves, right? Working maybe with the resources of some of these non-profiteers and other folks, but literally just, you know, moving with your own, what we call poverty scholarship, right? Horizontally, like Christine was talking about, with other tenants is very powerful. But then we've got that issue of fear, right? And so I want a beautiful segue to bring in our beautiful sister Shiro, who did do a minute in the legislator's office, but you know, that's a conscious politrickster. And also herself is a badass mama and warrior. Bobbi López, welcome to the group. Maybe you could speak because you were in there and you know about these things and you throw down for the community locally in Oakland, Berkeley, etc. You know, what are our situations right now? Anything else you want to bring in?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Tiny, Leroy.
Yeah.
I think right now we're actually with defund police and other things. It's really become a moratorium of what I would call political will. And we're having the hard conversations in multiple cities to really talk about whether our folks that we've elected have the political will to really kind of shift the needle on things that are fundamental. You know, like someone said earlier, Oakland has great laws on the books. You know, it has the moratorium that won't end until, you know, the eviction is called off. It actually has a tenant protection ordinance to avoid harassment. But the problem is, you have a lot of landlords that use intimidation, that, you know, and unfortunately that regardless of the amount of books and the amount of lawyers out there, folks are going to be impacted by fear. So that there has to be a whole nother level of things that need to happen that I know a lot of folks in the community worked on, you know, like land trust, landless movements, really kind of bringing in our public spaces and not even our private spaces into the public domain and for the public good, right? Because what we've seen is that there is a real estate and landlord market. And by the way, the realtor market just killed a bill that would have allowed small businesses at the state level to renegotiate their leases. That once this is done, you know, there's no renegotiation. So it's a very powerful lobby, not just at the state but locally, and it's something that we have to encounter frequently when we do legislation, right? And so I think the question right now is that we need to get folks with the political will and desire that are really going to deal with the folks that are most harmed by COVID, right? And the folks who were most harmed previous to COVID. I mean, if anything, COVID has just merely exacerbated the things that we already knew were happening on the ground. Now, just a little bit quickly about me, before I was in policy, I worked in San Francisco City Hall and Oakland City Hall. I was a tenant organizer, and I also had the very interesting experience of, I was part of an experiment of bringing community folks into housing, the housing inspection, which lasted a very short amount of time. But it was really interesting to be on the inside as a housing inspector for a while, because you could see the power that landlords had on a department, and also the intimidation they would go to intimidate workers, and realize that intimidation is nothing compared to what they would do to tenants.
Yeah.
And so the thing I learned the most from working in the city in that role is that organizing is everything. Organizing is everything, because not only do you not feel alone when you're being harassed and tormented, because there's a lot of emotional and psychological torment, there's also the piece where the city starts paying attention to you, because it's like the squeaky wheel theory, unfortunately, right? Everybody's wanting attention, but when you're organizing and people see actions, they start treating it very differently, right? So the sort of relationship-based stuff that may happen in department kind of goes out because people are actually organizing, and that's impacting decision making. So I think organizing is the most powerful tool people can do when it comes to whether it's not wanting to pay rent because, you know, they can't pay rent or whatever it is. The organizing component is very important to sort of sustain people living in their homes. I also think lawyering up is important, and documenting everything. And I think that these are the kind of trainings we should be doing, because I'm actually scared shitless, excuse my language, about what's going to happen at the end of this COVID emergency, because we have millions of people who can't pay rent. We have millions of people who been paying rent, and we don't have the legislation to deal with that. We just don't, right? We have everything saying protecting you until it ends, but what happens then? And at the state level, unfortunately, the legislation that's being discussed there, which is my job now, is looking at state legislation. You know, you have two bills that are dealing with this. One, 1436, which, you know, there's a whole group of folks really wanting folks to push forward cancel rent. And if you think about it, cancel rent is not, it's not an out there theory. If a landlord is actually getting support with their mortgage and has, you know, then the idea is that then the tenant can also get support with their circumstance. So it's not a crazy idea. It actually makes a lot of sense. It could be done. But the issue is that there wasn't the political will to find that and do that. So what you have is bills that are not there, but are helpful. So you have SB 1436 is a bill that David Chu's carrying, which basically allows someone to pay their rent 15 months, you know, past the amount of time from whenever the emergency ends. Not perfect, not great, but there. The other bill that's important is SB 1410. I've actually been opposed to it, but Friday there were some amendments that may change that, which was kind of like it was initially a fund of money to give, it was a rental assistance program, which is what a lot of us wanted. But the problem is that it allowed landlords to pick and choose who they wanted, which nobody wants. And now it's this kind of very complex tax credit system, which I'm worried a lot of small landlords are not going to figure, or tenants are going to figure out how to do. So you have all these things that are not really addressing what's going to happen in a few months. And it comes down to the question of political will. And I just want to end on the last note. So one thing I'm working on right now is pushing for, with a group of folks, we're in a coalition called Commit to Equity, and we're pushing for progressive revenue, meaning tax the rich. Because at the end of the day, we have a lot of very wealthy people in California.
Thank you.
Tons. Right now, we estimated if you just do a 2% increase on people making over $1 million in California, 2%, right? That's it. You could get $5 to $6 billion. And that, because that's the kind of money we could use for rental subsidies. That's the kind of monies that we can use to offset other things that are happening with our communities. But right now, we don't have the political will in Sacramento for people to do that. That's what we're encountering, right? We've been pushing the governor. We've been pushing other folks. I can talk forever, but I'm gonna stop because I know there's a lot of other folks that want to talk. And also people have questions, but I do think that, you know, right now in Oakland, the last thing I will say, really the last thing I'll say is that, you know, we have elections coming up. And I know for a fact, is it okay to talk about this?
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
You know, we have someone like Carol Fife running, who is, you know, in my opinion, has been on the right thing of things and like really could bring in a really fresh perspective. I mean, I really think that our council is very divided, is not progressive. Like whatever people think, City Oakland isn't progressive even in a neoliberal way. And so I think that it's an opportunity to really shift it and really start talking about how do we think about our money in our city in a way that take care of the most vulnerable.
Ashe, thank you. I know that, you know, and I'm holding in my heart the tenants, and I just want to be clear that the tenants we showed at the beginning of tonight's broadcast, our folks, the second lady, are one of literally hundreds of poor people who connected with us who are getting harassed by their scam lords. Not a few, not 50, not 30, but hundreds. So yeah, that fear that you, Bobbi, and Sanyika and other organizers know is about to hit is real because they're already doing it, right? But you know, we also know that the reason I renamed them the Scamlords is because we know they always got a scam up their sleeve, right? I wanted to leave a little bit of time for anyone who has questions. Leroy, do you want to?
Yeah, let's open it up for questions. I can unmute everybody. Just speak one at a time, okay? So, and you can unmute yourself too. So.
And I know there was also another couple people like Nora and some organizers, if you wanted to add comments or questions at this point. And then I have a question if no one else does. I'm going to say maybe not. Okay, so my question back to Christine, and this is really kind of trying to get at the fear piece, because I really, honestly, with the Raj Properties nightmare and a lot of other these scam lords out there. So they cut deals too. Let's be real, silencing deals, right? Like they'll sort of buy off some of the tenants, if you will, by saying, "Oh, you only have to give me $50 a week," which is like, no, actually, you don't have to give them anything right now. Hello, you know, we're over here like waving our hands. But most of the people right here on Black Arthur and Occupied Huichin, poor people of color neighborhood, intentionally blighted, we're homefulness, we're taking back land and trying to build a landless people's movement. We're doing it. But right here, all of our comrades, that's what their landlords and scam lords are doing. So they got these folk, you know, doing anything, any kind of side hustle so that they can cough up their compromise with the scam lord, right? I'm just wondering in your turn, in terms of Christine, how it sounds like people were just immediately with you. Like, was that a hard sell? Did you really have to, you know, make them feel safe? What was there tension around that?
So it was my husband, myself, and 4 kids. And when we told people what we were doing just to get by, they were like, yeah, we're gonna look the other way, right? Like, I'm being careful about how I describe it because there's a lawsuit and stuff. But yeah, you know, the tenants did not rent us the house or anything, but once they were aware of our presence, they didn't. And you know, the first thing we did was restore hot water, right? So that was like that like we all had a party together because hot water is just so fundamental, you know. So, and then the other thing, I just wanted to speak to something that you said quickly. We had constant daily harassment, not from the owner, but from his fake lawyer. And we were really like letting this wear us, it was wearing us down at some point. And I remember finally, because the guy Bernie had said that he was going to call Child Protective Services. And so that freaked me out. I mean, right? So like, and then it freaked my neighbor out, and she's like, I can't have you being here be the issue that causes me. So that was like, and then at that moment, up to that moment, I kind of entertained him every time he came because I wanted to hear, you know, he had loose lips, so he's always giving me valuable details, you know? But at that point, I was like, just fuck off. You're an asshole. Don't come back. And like, all of a sudden, his power just like evaporated, right? Because up to that point, we'd all been holding so much fear. And then once that happened, and we just refused to engage with him anymore, we wouldn't speak to him or anything. We just had the cameras in the hallways, and you know, they were taking doors off and doing all kinds of really crazy shit. But we just stood together and we were like, okay, well, as soon as they leave, you know, we're going to deal with this together. So,
wow.
Just to see the fear, because that's so real. You know, when people come for your kids, that's like,
that's it. That's it. It's done. Yeah, it's a wrap. I'm going to, oh, go ahead, Leroy.
I think Kathy has her hand up.
Go for it, Kathy.
No? Yeah.
Is that me?
Yeah.
No, Momii, Kathy. Go ahead, Momii.
Go with Momii, okay?
No problem.
That's my American name. Momii.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, I don't know what I was going to say. I just want to say that I believe that this is a really important moment that victories are acknowledged and held up, like really important things, because it is a tedious task to do housing rights organizing.
Oh, yeah.
If you're in a clinic, I was in Casa Justa for a couple of years, it's a myriad of laws. The system is fucking full of laws. Every law is hurting low-income, poor, black, brown people. I mean, there is no way to get around these fucking laws. So when I was there, I lost 1985, 1995. When does this law? You know, all of these are in place to hurt us.
Yeah.
These are just, oh God, compounding upon each other. And I just want to say the stolen land is literally true. that when you talk about the history of this country, Stanford, Hastings, Mount Rushmore, I want to acknowledge that those are real incidents of life.
Yeah.
That today, when we are fighting this kind of behemoth of capitalism, they're poor people that are uneducated. They don't have the internet to talk like this to each other.
Right.
We're talking about people in my neighborhood that are lost, children and elders. That's my thing. They're on the path of no return.
Yeah.
They're in the cages all over the United States, separated from their families.
Yeah.
I just want to say, it's really important to speak to your people. I mean, every day, all the time, whether you like them or not. Don't have to like them. Share the food. Hello, how your family doing? I mean, the really basic things that we want to change society around, because we don't have a socialist society. We have a capitalist society, and it's all about yourself. That's what they teach us. They teach us to be only care about you and go shopping, or when's the next item open? You know, so I just want to say that it is a struggle here in this building and in the neighborhood, as more and more people gentrified can afford Oakland and don't care about the fact that there is a housing crisis. People are being evicted and being moving on their own. So I like the victories, but I also want to really emphasize the importance of being in tune to your neighbors and caring about the issues that are going on that way before COVID. When people didn't care about Oakland, they didn't want to move to Oakland. Now, because of gentrification, we're all important. We're all really popular. But who was here when nobody cared about Oakland?
Yeah.
So I just want to say, let's get back to where the people that weren't even recognized back 20 years ago are even worse off in this situation.
Yeah.
You know, we're dealing with each other, and that's all good, and we're all uniting and marching and everything like that. But 50 years ago, when I was a teenager, we were talking about the same goddamn things, and I'm dealing with the same thing 50 years later.
Yeah.
Still the same, no different. Capitalism works. Belly of the monster.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
So we're going to have to close out pretty quick, but I do want to just say this to all of the organizers on this call. And thank you, Nora, for recentering us. So we're struggling right now with somebody should put mute.
Yeah, move.
Mute goes mute.
No, I was just agreeing with Momii, you know.
Go ahead. You want to add something? Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with Momii what she said and what she stated.
Shay. Okay. So just really quick, we're worried about the tenants of Raj Properties. It's real. We were going to have a in-person press conference, but because COVID started spiking again in the Bay Area, we're not. But I really do hope what we're going to do is we're putting out a press release from the tenants about these really glaring crimes that this corporation is doing and has done for years to its tenants. And just to get real, because Sanyika talked about working in SROs, that's poor people housing, where me and Ma were when we were lucky enough to have that money, right? Or if not, we weren't, we were on the street. But a lot of the buildings they own in Berkeley are SROs. They're really good at intimidating poor people, just to be real. And we know the ways that a lot of immigrant, black and brown and folk without paper and folks who are culturally not even necessarily about this United Snakes, how easy for that it is for them to get afraid. And for good reason. You know, you say you're going to call ICE on people. Yeah, they're going to shut up. What? Hello? So I just want to say that we're asking people to stand with us, to share this information that we're going to put out as a press release. We'll put it out to everybody in our community, but to understand and overstand that there's literally thousands of these tenants who are afraid to talk. And so honestly, at this point, the folks need that support. I think that's the other thing. The other thing is to just ask as well, and I wanted to bring this in really quick. Ty had talked about organizing with the organization that you did, and you were talking about organizing buildings. I'm wondering if in that case, you know, what you were offering people. Were you offering them like Christine talked about, getting the hot water on? What were the things that you were actually putting out, just as it might help Momii and Io and some of the other tenants?
What kind of help and resources I gave the tenants?
Yeah.
The tenants at the time were really interested in like getting their stories out and holding HUD accountable. So some of the things we did, we held direct actions in front of their building. We did some protesting. I helped them get in touch with some of the like legal resources around here, legal aid services, and actively wrote letters on behalf of them through the organization and for them. We did op-eds and we did like video stories too. So just doing anything and then making phone calls on behalf of them to different organizations because a lot of them are in fear and a lot of them don't want to put their name on the front line, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then that's a big thing right now, especially with COVID, is the fear, you know. Tenant organizing has become, it's easy to get a hold of people, but it's really hard for people to want to do anything because they're already scared that they're going to lose their housing, and then like voicing what's already happening is going to like just put them more at risk. So a lot of tenants have gone into hiding. A lot of my main like leaders and members of my group have gone into, I haven't heard from them aside from them just like filling me in on like the backlash they've been getting from their landlords. Wow. But the amount of threats that's happening, it's just unreal, especially like here in Washington. It's like totally unreal. Even like from HUD and the landlords working together saying that like, if you report this, then I'm not going to honor your voucher and I'm friends with the HUD guy, you know, and it's just like.
Okay, well,
you know,
there you go.
Yeah.
Right? Well, let me just say this again. We're running out. Thank you, Ty. That was badass, but that shows the connection with us all in this occupied land, right? So Nora also brought up how we need to do a social media, you know, campaign on the same day as the press release. I think that's a great idea, that would target city council members. Cause you know, a lot, literally, if I hope you heard Momii say something like 90% of their buildings are in Berkeley and something like 30% in Oakland. Not 90% of their buildings, excuse me, 90% of the rental properties in Berkeley they own. That's some crazy numbers. So I do believe, and I agree that, yeah, that those council people need to help us. I also just want to say we'll probably put it out in the next couple days so people can be watching for it. The last thing is just to let people know, like Ty and others on here, and Sanyika, Poor People's Radio provides a voice. We do a podcast that's international for tenants and for folks in struggle. So if anybody needs extra platform to get their voices out there, please know that we're a resource. That's why we do what we do. I'm gonna turn it back to you, Leroy, to close us out.
Yeah, so thank you for tuning in. Shout out to Wesleyan for engineering with us and making this possible. And we will be back at this time slot 2 Sundays for now, July 12th, with a special on land liberation, on stolen land, poor people's land liberation projects like homefulness, as well as remember to check out the Poor People's Survival Guide to COVID-19 and the virus of poverty, which you can get on a sliding scale starting at 1 billion and then 0 at www.poorpress.net, and stay tuned for our upcoming How to Never Call the Police workshop on July 19th. To get a recording of this show, Subscribe to Power News Network on YouTube. All power to the people.
Yeah, and I just want to add, thank you everybody for your badassery. So much love, Sanyika, Christine, Ty, Bobbi, Momii. We're all we got, seriously. So much love. And we say Poor Magazine is in fact Po. So we need your dough. If anybody got a little change, we do appreciate it. Our youth are trying to create a mentorship for writing about police terror. So we got a little mask campaign out there going, but all that to say, we love you all. We appreciate you, and stay tuned. And we'll be taking this Raj fight to the end when the wheels pop off, family. All right, all power to the people.
Take care. Have a good night.
Love you, everybody.
people.
Love
Good night,
everybody.
y'all.
Thank you
Love
so
you.
much.